Hey, and welcome back to Talk About Worlds. I'm SirFelixTheCat, and this is Nerd Talk Thursday. Alright, so I am finally doing a video that I've been teasing for the better part of a month, which is where I dive into a book called The Sacred Magics of Abramelin the Mage. And this is a very weird book. A little background on how I found it. I was doing some digging into like demonology and all this other stuff around Christmas, the season of demons, around Halloween a few years back. And doing so, I found this book, which I was told at the time when I looked it up, that it is about being able to control a demon that you're born with. And I was like, well, that's kind of an interesting thing. It sounds like nonsense. I do want to look into it because it just sounds wild. And yeah, this book has absolutely nothing to do with that. Like, nothing at all. I don't know where whoever said that online got that information, but they are just completely wrong. This book is about magic, but it's very religion, like God-based. And that was a big shocker to me. It is a lot tied in with the Bible. And more background on the book itself. This is like from the 18th century or older. It's actually a book that was originally found in German, or translated from ancient Hebrew into German. And the author of this, who is S.L. McGregor Mathers, he's using the French version, which, doing a quick little search online, the French version appears to have actually been copied and translated from the German copy. So the background on it's a little iffy, considering it was ancient Hebrew, and then it's German, and then it's French, but it's also the German copy, which is supposed to be the original, but the original would have had been from, ancient Hebrew. So yeah, it's a little bit up in the air. The occult community considers this to be just absolute hard fact. Like, this is a very historical document. I am probably actually in the party of, this seems to be a fairy tale-ish type story. And I'll go through this and I'll kind of explain why I feel that way as we go through this. So yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so you're going to need to know a little bit about the cast and who exactly is Abra-melin. So I'm going to start with Abra-melin, since it's his magic. He's the one who taught the magic in this book. Abra-melin is a mage from Egypt. He is a very devout follower of God, and it was through his devout following of God that he was able to learn these magics. You cannot learn this, like per this story, you cannot learn this unless you are devout in your religion. There's a couple ground rules that have to follow with that. One, you don't actually have to be Christian, Jewish, something like that. You can be pagan, you can be a believer in whatever religion you want, but you have to be devout in it. That means you can't go later and switch your religion. If you at one point accepted Christ into your life as your Lord and Savior as a Christian, you then can't be like 10 years later, you know what, screw this, I'm going to be a Jew. It's just not going to work out that way. And yes, I say Jew as in the Jewish religion, not as in like the racist Jew. That's pretty messed up. But yeah. Next character you have in here is Abraham the Jew, or Abraham of Worms. You might start to get the same idea I had. It feels like some of these characters, like Abraham the Jew, would be Abraham from the Bible. You also have Rabbin Moses. The next character he meets after Moses is Aaron, Moses' brother in the Bible. And so on. You're going to see this weird connection of names from the Bible. But Abraham the Jew is the quintessential main character. He is the one telling the story once you get past the author's S.L. McGregor Mathers introduction. And that's who is supposed to have originally written the manuscripts, which was broken down into 3 different books. These books are something that, or these manuscripts are something that Abraham wrote for his youngest son Lamesh, because he had 2 sons and a daughter. His oldest son, he gave a book that basically warned him about the dangers of magic, and that was purely it. Just purely it. And then to the youngest son, Lamesh, he wanted him to actually learn and have the same knowledge that he gained on the journey he explains in these books. So let's go ahead and dive into this. We're going to start off by going through parts of his journey. I'm not going to detail the whole thing because it's quite a long read, but I do want to go over a couple issues Abraham the Jew runs into on his journey. And we're going to start in the town of Prague. In the town of Prague, I met a wicked man named Antony, aged 25 years, who in truth showed me wonderful and supernatural things. But may God preserve us from falling into so great an error, for the infamous wretch avowed to me that he had made a pact with a demon. So what we're getting there is the first kind of explanation that, hey, there are multiple ways magic can be done. One is the correct way, which I explained, you get it from God. And then there's the bad way, which is what we see in basically every horror movie and stuff like that, where there's a demon involved. The demon basically offers you a great deal, like, hey, I'm going to give you this incredible magic. But in return, it's used for evil. It's used for negative things. Maybe it's to, like, you're going to get this great wealth, or you're going to be able to fly, turn invisible, walk through walls. But in return, you have to, like, give them your soul for all of eternity. Something like that. Like the deal with the devil. That's the equivalent of what you're making. Which, it's like a monkey's paw situation. You're going to get something cool for now, but things are just going to go terrible. All right. Next, we have his time in Egypt. In Egypt, and let me say, I am at times going to not read it word for word because the way things are phrased in this book sometimes just make absolutely no sense when you read them. You kind of got to read it, piece it together to see what words would actually belong there and make more sense colloquially today. In Egypt, the first time I found 5 persons who were esteemed and reputed as wise men. Among them were 4, named Hore, Abimelech, Alkion, and Orlech. And yes, I am probably butchering these names. These 4 performed their operations by means of the course of the stars and the constellations, adding many diabolical conjurations and impious and profane prayers, and performing the whole with great difficulty. The 5th, named Abramelin, again, probably butchering a name, operated by means and aid of demons, to whom he prepared statues, prepared sacrifices, and thus they served him with their abominable arts. Again, we have some people who are doing like some astrology type stuff. They're dealing with like star signs and apparently able to do some sort of cool things, but it's more of like studying. It's just learning and understanding, it seems like. But last guy, number 5, he's just another person doing demons. He's doing sacrifices. They don't say what he's sacrificing. I'm assuming people or animals, which is disturbing. But it is quite interesting. The next one I think is one of the most interesting. And it kind of goes into what I talked about earlier about keeping your faith. In Paris, I found a wise man called Joseph, who, having denied the Christian faith, had made himself a Jew. This man truly practiced magics in the same manners as Abra-melin, but he was very far from arriving at the perfection therein, because God, who is just, never granteth the perfect, veritable, and fundamental treasure unto those who deny him, notwithstanding that in the rest of their life they might have the most holy and perfect men in the world. There's your example. this guy did everything right. Like, Joseph was doing everything right. He knew how to perform the ceremony to become a mage. He understood how the magic is done. But because at one point he moved from being a Christian to Jewish, that just completely botched his plan. He can never learn the magic now, which I think is absolutely wild. Just absolutely wild. And then back to talking about the devil. And then there was the Bohemian. With the aid and assistance of his associate, he performed astounding feats. He rendered himself invisible. He was able to fly in the air. And he was able to enter locked rooms through the keyhole in the door. He knew our greatest secrets. And once he told me things that which God alone could have known. But the art cost him way too dear. For the devil had made him swear in a pact that he would use his secrets to dishonor God and to prejudice his neighbor. Ultimately, his body was found drugged through the streets, his head without any tongue therein, lying in a drain. And that was all he was able to profit from when he made this diabolical deal with the devil. Happy, friendly stuff. That's the whole monkey's paw thing I was talking about. Devil made him a deal like, hey, you just gotta be, a complete piece of trash. And I'll give you some magic. And, well, yeah, the powers he had were pretty dope. I want to turn invisible. I want to be able to fly. I would like to be able to go through a locked door, like I'm some sort of vampire or something. But, yeah, it ended up with him being killed. Like, brutally being killed. And then the last person I am going to go over is a young lady he met in the town of, and I'll mispronounce this too, I believe it's Lintz, Lintz. In Lintz, I worked with a young woman who one evening invited me to go with her, assuring me that without any risk, she would conduct me to a place where I greatly desired to find myself. I allowed myself to be persuaded by her promises. She then gave unto me an augument, which I rubbed on the principal pulses of my feet and hands. And she did the same. And at first, it appeared to me that I was flying through the air, in the actual place that I wished I was. And I had no way to mention this to her. Passing over in silence and without respect, that which I saw, which was admirable, and appeared to myself to have remained there for a long time. I felt as if I were awakening from a profound sleep, and I had a great pain in my head and deep melancholy. I turned around and saw that she was actually seated at my side. She began to recount to me all that she had seen, which was different from everything I had seen. I was, however, much astonished, because it appeared to me as if I had actually been where I thought I was, and in reality had seen what had happened there. However, I asked her one day to go alone to that same place and to bring me back news of my friend, whom I knew for certain was a distant 200 leagues away. She promised to do so in the space of an hour. She rubbed herself with the same augument, and I expected her to be able to fly away. But instead, she fell to the ground and remained there for about 3 hours as if she were dead. So that I began to actually think she might be dead. And at last she began to stir, like a person who was waking. Then she rose into an upright position and with much pleasure began to give me an account of her expedition, saying that she had been to the place where my friend was, and all that he was doing. That which was entirely contrary to his profession. Once I concluded that she had just told me a simple dream, and that this augument was the causer of this fantastic sleep. And she proceeded to confess to me that this augument had been given to her by the devil. So, this is a guy who traveled all around the world, Abraham. And he met some great people. He met some very terrible, evil people. Like, there's more in here that he met that made deals with demons and the devil. And he keeps getting misled by these people. Because they keep pretending to be like, oh yeah, I have the actual secret you're looking for. I have the secret you're looking for. And they're just basically selling snake oil. And in this book, this is the first book of the 3. Abraham is basically telling Lamech, I'm not sure how I even say his name, that, like, trying to warn him about the dangers of this. That there is a true magic, but you're going to find a lot of evil magic out there as well. And I don't mean evil as in just dark magic. They list the types of magic there are in this. You have light or holy magic. You have dark or black magic, which is like, think of a video game. Think of Final Fantasy. You have your light magic. You're using it to heal people, do great things. I mean, float, I believe, is a light magic spell, a white magic spell in Final Fantasy. So it's not all just like great holy healing powers, but it's like dope things. And then you have black magic, which is like cast a fireball, open up a portal, do something crazy like that. And then there's also conjuring, because they do admit that the spirits, like conjurable spirits, like summon a fire creature, summon even a demon, summon an angel. Those are all types of summons. And on the topic of angels, you also have your guardian angel, which, you know, it's just like you would think it is. They're there to protect you, guide you the right way, and they can do great things for you, or at least very interesting things for you, which I'll be getting into those here in just a moment. All right, so right now I'm on the 8th chapter of the first book, and this is when we first find out exactly how old Abraham is when he's writing this book. The year is 1409, and he is 96 years old, which is just absolutely wild to me. Absolutely wild. I mean, we see people today, and when they get 96, they start to like lose their coherency. But if you read this guy is sharp as a tack while writing this. So being 96 and being that sharp, that is very impressive. But in this, he starts off by saying how much good he did with his magic once he learned it from Abra-melin. Up until now, I have healed persons of all conditions who were bewitched unto death, and it was no less than 8,413 people, and they belonged to all religions. I did so without making any exception in any case. Another great thing he did, and this is just a very impressive, interesting thing I'll touch on towards the end of this, is I delivered unto the Count Frederick 2,000 artificial cavalry. And there is a spell they show later on, and I'll get into how the spells are done before I get there. But he delivered 2,000 artificial soldiers to this guy, because there is a spell to summon soldiers, which is wild. Wild. That's why I am in the party to believe this isn't really true. Like, this has got to be a work of fiction because of that. Because if you could summon 2,000 soldiers or more, would you not just be able to do whatever you want, stop any war? Like, summon 50,000 soldiers, and they're artificial, so they're not going to be taking damage the same way a person would. At least that's how I'm figuring this works. You would be able to stop all wars. You would be able to bring peace. They wouldn't even have to do anything. Just their pure might and mass would just bring world peace. You could stop it. You could stop it. But since that's not being done, and that's what, you know, you would think God and Jesus would want if you're doing the whole Christian faith. Who knows? Who knows? Anyways. And then here is, in my opinion, the absolute craziest thing he did. Okay. And this is going to be quite a bit of tongue twister. It might not make sense as I read it, but it's the whole wording of this book. Now, once thy faculty of being able to avail oneself of the sacred magic has been obtained, it is permissible to demand from the angel, your guardian angel, a sum of coined money, proportionate unto thy birth, quality, and capacity, the which without difficulty will be granted unto thee. Such money is taken from the hidden treasures. It is, however, necessary to note that in all treasures, one is allowed to take the fifth part. So, again, he's just basically saying right there, you can ask your guardian angel for money, and it'll be given to you. But you can only take 1/5 of it. You can't take the whole thing. Which, in my mind, just basically says, like, okay, well, I want $50 trillion, and I'm just going to get 1/5 of 50 trillion, so I'm still going to be multi-billionaire. It's insane to me. Insane to me. God permitting the same, although some braggart chatters do say there is an infinitude hereof which is destined to be reserved unto the Antichrist. I do not for a moment say this may not be true, but undoubtedly from the same treasures one may also take the fifth part. So there's treasures that are saved for the Antichrist and you could take 1/5 of it. I don't understand any of that. I'm not going to pretend I do, but hey, it's more money I guess you get to take. There are yet more which be destined unto others. Mine own particular treasure was assigned to me at Herbopolis, and I performed the operation of the 8th chapter in the 3rd book. It was not in any way guarded, and was very ancient. It was of gold, which had never been struck into ingots, and which I afterwards caused to be beaten out and converted into the equivalent weight of gold florins by the spirits. So there he's basically saying, like, hey, I got this gold. I conjured some spirits, which, again, a spirit can be one of the, think of the Celtic spirits where you have, like, the fire spirit. Everything has a spirit within it. You have angels and you have demons. So he summoned some stuff, some form of spirits, and had them beat it out like raw gold into basically gold coins. The which was done in a few hours. And I did this operation seeing that mine own possessions were few and of little worth. And so poor I was that in order to marry a person who had a considerable dowry, I was forced to make use of the art. And I employed the 4th sign of the 3rd book and the 3rd sign of the 19th chapter, and I married my cousin for 40,000 gold florins as a dowry. I married my cousin. Just hilarious. Hilarious. Anyways, also in this book, they go into talking about how there really is a war going on. It's not open war, like if you think of the South Park episode back in the day where Kenny was playing the PSP and he got chosen to be part of God's army because he beat the PSP game, which no one had ever beaten before, and that's how God was recruiting his soldiers. It's not an open war like that. This is more of a secret war, not Marvel's secret war, but, along that lines. It being understood that in this operation, we have to do with a great and powerful enemy, whom through our own weakness as humans, or using a science we cannot resist without particular and assistant aid from the holy angels and from the Lord of the good spirits, aka God. But most people end up abandoning it to embrace and follow the deceits of the demon, because we're human, we're gullible. And yes, that was a very big tongue twister. I skipped some stuff because it just doesn't make any sense to throw it in there. It just doesn't. And then here was another interesting part. This is where they directly refer to the Bible. As we see in many holy scriptures, in a matter of the Pharaoh and his adherents, which despised the veritable and certain wisdom of Moses and Aaron. And were in the beginning backed up by the devil, who showed them by means of enchantments what he could do. They were cruelly chastised by God, with divers plagued, and were at last all drowned in the Red Sea. Basically showing that, hey, once Moses got the Jews through, got the people through the Red Sea, it closed up on the Egyptians. It destroyed the Pharaoh's people. It is wild. But yeah, again, they're mentioning Moses and Aaron, and it's apparently not supposed to be Rabbin Moses and the Aaron he met earlier. It's completely different Moses and Aaron from the Bible. That's where I say this book has a lot of confusion in it. It goes back and forth on things, quite often. All right, once we get to the second book of this, that was all just in the first book. And we're, 25 minutes into this? Now we're getting into the second book. And here I like the chapters because they kind of start off with a question or a phrase, however you want to word this. So the first chapter. What and how many be the forms of veritable magic? And they start this off with a message. I exhort you, ye who read, to have the fear of God and to study justice. Because, like I said earlier, you need to be devout in whatever religion you are. And I guess fear of God. But also, to study justice. They do call out quite a few times. And I mentioned it earlier when someone else was prejudiced. You need to do things for the good of not just you, but for your neighbor. And by neighbor, they mean anybody around you. It means if you see someone from, say you're in Texas and you see someone from Mexico, don't slight them, don't do things to be cruel to them, like reporting them so they get deported. It means actually do things to help them, help yourself and them, help people. Don't be self-centered, don't think about yourself, don't be closed-minded. It's truly a good message, at least that last part. Truly is. But to answer that question of what and how many forms, well, I'm going to at least go how many forms, because there's quite a few, and I don't feel like really going through them all, because they're quite wild. Some are just numerology, some are astrology, stuff like that. But there are 12 principal arts. And there's some that deal with metals, which is metallurgy. You have stuff that deal with the planets. There's a couple different ones that deal with the planets. There's some that, like I said, deals with numerology. It's pretty wild stuff. And then there's an age requirement. The age of the person who wishes to undertake this operation. His age ought not be less than 25 years nor more than 50. Which is interesting. At least be 25, so that means, you're able to go to the bars, you're able to rent a car. But, you don't want to be 50 because that's when you should be enjoying retirement, right? I mean, I understand that. And it's not saying you have to stop practicing when you're 50, just to start the operation, to be able to become, take the first steps to becoming a mage. And the ceremony you have to do. It's something that takes multiple days and a lot of time. A lot of time. You're going to be doing plenty of studying. You're going to be doing a lot of, as they say, praying or meditating. And there is a day which it should start. The true time of commencing this operation is the first day after the celebration of the feast of Easter. And this was ordained unto Noah, being the most convenient time, and the end falleth just at the Feast of Tabernacle. So again, you're finding out more mages, and it happens to be another character from the Bible. It's Noah. It's insane. Imagine reading this in a church to somebody. How much they would just explode from this, because it's intense. It is intense. All right, and I'm not reading all the steps. This is pretty much the walkthrough of how to do the ceremony. I'm just reading small bits and pieces that I find quite interesting. Concerning the selection of place, which is the 11th chapter. And there's many places you can do this. So you can do this in solitude, like in a small forest, where in the middle of it you'll make a small altar and cover it with a shelter made of fine branches. And you'll make it, well enough to where rain's not going to come in, elements won't affect you. You can also do this in a city if that's like us. Most of us who are watching this, we don't live in the middle of the woods. We're not going to be able to just go out into the woods daily and build something. But if you're here, what they're saying, if you're in the middle of a town or a city, you need to, I guess you could use your own apartment, but what Abraham did in his is he ended up getting his own extra small apartment. One that has a few different requirements. It must have a window, which I would hope your apartment has a window. If not, you're paying too much for it. But it must also have a terrace or a balcony that is uncovered. Like no covering over it. And you need to put river sand across the floor of it, like of that terrace balcony. You need to make sure that this apartment cannot be looked into by others, like prying eyes, people who are just being curious and want to look in. They can't do that easily. So basically, if you're in the middle of New York and your window looks directly into the building across the street, that's not what they want. They want you to have more of a secluded apartment building, I guess. You also need to have a garden type area for your apartment that you can go out and exercise in. So, I mean, really a house. If you have a house, then that works well if you have like a house with a backyard and everything. Just choose a room that has a window, which again, hopefully all your rooms have windows. I don't know why they wouldn't. But it also needs to have a garden there, and it can't be looked into. Which to me, the secrecy just comes off as a little weird. And as you continue through this book, they kind of go through summoning angels, demons, and other spirits. There's quite a few different books involving this, and they kind of break down the different categories of demons, angels, and all that good stuff. Which, maybe I'll put some of this on screen. If I do, then I'm glad I did. But there is a lot here. I'll see if I can find this. Hopefully I did get this up for you. Hopefully you're seeing it right now. And I'm not just like talking in circles about nothing that you can't see. But it's a lot. And they have all their different names, all their different rankings, what their names mean. It is very interesting stuff. Very interesting. We also get to read what we should answer unto the interrogations of the spirits and how we should resist their demands. The wicked devil knoweth full well that you are in no way obliged unto him, and that you have commenced the operation under the grace and mercy of God, under the protection and defense of the holy angels. Nevertheless, he will not fail to try his fortune, and he will seek to turn you from this veritable path. You must be constant and courageous, and swerve not in any way, either to the right hand or to the left. Basically saying, stay straight and narrow, don't fall for the demon's things, which has been a constant message throughout this whole book. And you can also always rely on your guardian angel. So, say you have a spirit who's kind of not listening to you. What this tells you is, immediately on beholding your steadfastness, they will obey you. But should they not, you ought to invoke your guardian angel, whose chastisement will quickly fail them. So basically summon your guardian angel, and he's going to come through and he's going to belittle them, chastise them, and yeah, then they'll start obeying you again. All right, and that basically brings us to the third book. The third book is when they actually start showing how this magic's done. And the author of the book, again, he early in his introduction goes over and shows us some things. And he keeps calling it the Key of Solomon.
The Key of Solomon, the Key of Solomon.
And, well, yes and no. The Key of Solomon does involve, like, penance and all this other stuff, which I'm showing you a couple on screen right now. These are interesting. They are related to the occult. They have magic symbols. However, the closest one you can find for a Key of Solomon is this, which is this bottom corner one, which, ignore the circle around it, but at least the box of squares, which that brings us to what that box would be called. Now, here you have ancient letters in here, which they actually do stand for words. But what this is supposed to be closest related to is a sator square, which you can see down here below. A sator square would be a square with letters in it, which is pretty well known. Wouldn't be surprised if you had seen this before. But the way this works is you have a box that's 5 by 5. And you would have SATOR, sator. Next line is aripo. And then you have tenant, opera, rotas. The thing that makes this so special is now you're looking at this and you see sator. Now follow that R down, you have rotas. Follow it from the S to the other side and you have sator, rotas. You can do the same thing with aripo. Aripo, you have aripo going from the top to the bottom, from the or opera going from top to bottom. You have read that backwards, it's aripo. It's just something special about this, is how you can read this both forward, backwards, up, and down. Some people will say you can read it side to side, but if you clearly look, RPNPR is not a word. Just is not. And that is how this magic is done. And it's all well and good, and they go through this, and they tell you what these spells can do. And it's not just like literally using sator, but so the first one, the first spell they show you, or first magic word square, is to know all things past and future in general. And I'll spell these words out. I'll hopefully have this on screen. It is MILON. Next word is IRAGO. And then Lamal, LAMAL. And then OGARI. And finally NOLIM. Nolim, I guess. Yeah, so you look at this, and doing this somehow will get you to be able to view all words past, or all things past and future in general. The next one would be for things that happen in war, or things to happen in war. And then things past and forgotten, tribulations to come, and so on. We go on, and they each have these different word squares. But what starts to get weird is they stop following that same pattern. They don't all match the same way. Which is when we get later into this book. You go a few chapters in, and for instance, where's the one I like? In the 4th chapter, the first spell is, and I mean, it still matches up the same way, but the way it's laid out is just incredibly different. Incredibly different. So, the first one would be for mirrors and glass and crystal. This is for divers of visions. The top line is going to be GILIONIN. The second line is ILIONIN. Letter count just doesn't match because you're missing the G in this sense, like in this case. And it's 2 words. We're missing like 50% of this nonsense, or over 50% because we're missing a letter. And I don't get how that's supposed to work. That makes no sense. And that gets worse as you go on. There's some that are just absolutely insane. Let me see if I can find it. There's the spell. So, we're going to go to chapter 29. And, of course, I'm going to start looking for the one that I saw that was interesting at the beginning, which is to cause armed men to appear, to summon your army. And, again, we have just some complete and utter nonsense. You can cause a siege to appear, for your defense, like armed men for your defense to appear. And the way they have these laid out is just baffling. Just baffling. We're still following that thing where they're going to repeat basically the same word, but missing a letter. So let's say for armed men to appear for your defense. The word is M-A-H-A-R-A-C-A-H. And the follow-up is A-H-A-R-A-Q-C-Q-A-H. But you see the way it's written out. Instead of being a nice little neat square, it's two words, and we're just losing the whole word square thing. It gets super weird. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book House of Leaves. This is a book that you have to like take, twist, spin around because there's pages where the writing just goes all wild. And that's what I kind of felt I dove into towards the end of this book, reading through some of these spells, or I don't even want to call them spells, like these word squares, which aren't even squares anymore. It's just some letters spread across a page. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't have, a religion. Maybe it's because I don't really believe in anything, because truthfully, I have a religion, I just don't talk about it. It's not a religion as you would call a religion, it's just a belief. I have a belief in something. And yeah, maybe that's it. Also, there is a word of warning. One important word of warning at the end of the book, which is how I kind of want to close this out. Before I say that, let me just again state, this is a very interesting book. Do check it out. If you want to believe in magic, go for it. If you're devout in your belief of God, never change your religion, give it a shot. Let me know how it works out for you. But I will finally quote the following passage from the Key of Solomon the King. Accursed be he who hath taken the name of God in vain. Accursed be he who useth his knowledge unto an evil end. Be he accursed in this world and in the world to come. Amen. And be he cursed in the name which he hath blasphemed. And since I clearly can't do the magic in this book, I just have to say, well, God damn. Hey, thanks for watching.
Give us a like if you enjoyed it, and dislike it if you didn't.
Let us know what you think about the channel.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Tell your mom.